Lee, what's the attitude going into the very last game of the season? Will you treat it like any other league game, or will there be any experimentation, any changes at all? What's your thought process going into the game?
Try and win the game. So same as I think, we've gone big on building momentum and habit forming, and being the best version of yourself every day. So I don't think you can turn it on and off or change things too much. So there'll be a couple that are enforced with Hayden Roberts' Pringy's had minor surgery, as has JMO. So in terms of them two, they won't be available. So that again provides opportunity. But I think in terms of the mindset, the lads have we just finished training now. The attitudes, the competitiveness, the drive, the intensity that they worked at today was top. So again, I think that in terms of for the group is something that we definitely need to take into Saturday.
And has the carrot of ending the season on an 8-game unbeaten run, has that added a bit more weight to the match, do you think?
No, possibly. I think it's taking it game by game. I think that's the biggest bit. I think it's, of course, the run's great, and we spoke a lot about momentum, and I think it's about taking the experiences. So it's a different experience for us as a group to go this long unbeaten, so we want to continue it. I think that's the bit that will definitely stand you in good stead for next season if you reflect on on the times that you have, good, bad, or indifferent, and use it to become better and use it to learn to improve. So, like I said, the lads have been terrific. Throughout, even in the tough run, they were training properly. They were doing everything. That's why I was quite confident that they'd turn it around and go and hit the level that they have done in the last however many. So I think it's about continuing that.
Yeah, when we spoke to Brian Tinian a couple of months ago, he said 10 points. We just need to get 10 points more next year, and we'll be challenging for the playoffs. Has this unbeaten run shown you that you're capable of being consistent? Because you told me last week, if we're more consistent next season, we'll have a successful season.
Yeah, there's a huge number of factors that go into it. I think of course that. I think like I said, we need to recruit right in the summer. We need to make sure that we have a real strong pre-season, which I'm really looking forward to. And then I think you need a bit of luck along the way. You need people to stay fit. You need things to land your way at times, as well as obviously doing the hard work every day. So even this season, we've shown we can compete with anybody in this division. I think that's the challenge: is can you do it consistently across 46-game season, which is the biggest challenge for any side. So I think there's that. I think there's how do you respond to defeats. I think there's how do you respond to going on winning runs. And I think they're the bits for me that we've tried to kind of go after a little bit this season that will hopefully help us next season.
And how have you changed? What have you learnt? If there's one thing you've learnt being head coach of Bristol City since first walking through the door the tail end of last year?
I need a bit of time on that. I think that's the stuff. That's the reason for going away in the summer, to look back and reflect. And of course, I'll have learned lots of things. I think that, like I said to you before, I overanalyse, I reflect on everything. So again, I think for me it'd be going away. And of course, I've learned a lot about the division, learned a lot about the group that we've got here. The culture of the club, the way we operate, the way we work. And again, I think when you come in, you always come in with your own ideas, your own philosophies and ways of working. But there's also certain things that I have to adapt and tweak, to fit with a group of players or fit with the culture and the expectations of the club as well. So I think that I'll spend some time in the summer going away and reflecting on what I've learnt and what do I take into next season so that I'm better.
So the final whistle goes at Stoke at 2:30. I'm sure it's not just a case of right, see you at the start of pre-season. How do you spend the next few days after the Stoke game?
I got my son's birthday party on Sunday. He's having that, so I'll definitely be at that, and then I'll be in a few days next week. So I'll be in with various meetings and finalising certain bits and pieces. So we'll do that, and then obviously it shifts right into recruitment and making sure that we do as much as work as we can, and of course even for me the rest element's important. So we've obviously got a big charity walk coming up as well the week after Stoke. So in terms of putting myself for a 24-hour walk, which obviously is going to be a good challenge, and then some time with the family and recharging, ready to push on next season.
And it's only right we mention that. I'm sure you're still looking for some sponsorship.
Indeed we are, yeah. So the more we can raise, it's a fantastic cause. The hospice, obviously just down the road from me, is an incredible place. I know there's been some bits put out recently of our visits, and it's something that we want to support continuously going forward. I don't want it to be a one-off. I think it's something that we want to give back. We're privileged. I think it's like I said, it's an incredible place. It does some incredible things. There's 10 of us going to do the walk, and hopefully we can raise as much as we can.
I'm happy to give that a plug. When can supporters expect to see the retained list?
That will come out. Obviously, need to finalise the definite dates, but obviously that'll come out at some point, I'm sure, in the next week.
And you mentioned recruitment. I imagine do you have to be quick off the mark? Because a lot of clubs, I guess, will be in competition for the same players. How close are you, do you think, to going in for players, if you like?
Yeah, I think we're doing a lot of the work. I think people finish at different stages, so you obviously have to take that into account as well. the conversations are constant. They obviously they ramp up a little bit obviously now, but in terms of you have to go through the right channels. You have to do things properly, and again, it's such a fluid market. It can change so quickly. So the conversations are constant, ongoing, and obviously we're ready to move quickly as and when is the right time.
And is it fair to say you've got a plan A, a plan B, a plan C?
D, yeah. The recruitment guys are constant in terms of that. You see the volume of work. I get a weekly report that tells me all of the games that they've been to, the players that have watched, the grading that we do. I sit with Sean regularly. Me, Brian, and Sean sit down regularly. So them chats are constant. I think, and that's the bit. What you have to be smart with how you work the window. Of course, having plan A, but what you don't want to do is wait right up to the last minute. Plan A doesn't happen, and then you find yourself in a position where you're ending up with plan E, and I think that's the biggest bit. I think of course you have to commit the time and energy into getting the exact ones you want, but if it's looking like it's not going to happen, or it's a challenge too far, or unreachable, then you have to at some point make a decision to move on. So again, I think that's why I think it's about being proactive in the window, which we definitely are, and then it's there's a big skill set in being reactive as well.
So, I mean, life's never like a dream world, but ideally you'll have some signings in the building for the start of pre-season training. Yeah,
ideally. I'd like to. I think it helps. I think, the way we work pre-season and, integrating in the group, the social side, players understanding how you want to play, what you want to do, what their roles and responsibilities are, the earlier you can get them in, the better. So, yeah, ideally I'm hopeful that we turn up at the start of pre-season with some new faces.
You're someone who keeps your cards close to your chest, and I fully respect that, but is it a fair comment to say you would like to keep Scott Twine?
Yeah, I would. I think I said about it after the game at the weekend in terms of, I thought he was excellent. I think he was unfortunate with the injury. I think, he obviously started terrifically against Watford, then he was out for such a long period when, it coincided with us having a little bit of a tough time, and then since he's been back, he's understandably, it's taken him a few games to get up to speed. I thought he was very good against Norwich, and I thought he was very good at the weekend. So I think we're starting to see, the qualities of why we brought him in. And he fits the group, he fits the profile. But like I said, at the weekend, there's so many permutations, there's so many factors that go into whether it's possible or not. So they're the bits that, especially after Stoke, where you then go, right, is it possible?
And has your relationship changed at all? Is it the same from when you were at MK Dons, or is it picked off where you left off?
Yeah, it's probably, you'd have to ask him that. From my perspective, I think in terms of how I work with players, I'd say it's fairly consistent. I think there's always a balance, and Twine is a great example of that. Of you want him to play the positional game, but he's at his best when he's got freedom off it. And I thought he was excellent at that at the weekend, where he's the spaces he takes up, the creativity in terms of the things that he tries, and especially with that, what I wouldn't want to do is stifle a player. So I think in terms of he understands, especially out of possession, his role, his responsibilities, which everyone talks about is in possession. He actually puts in a real shift when we haven't got the ball, and then in possession again. I think you can see with I think he needs to play with an element of freedom, and when he does, and when his quality is right, he brings others into play like Sykesy, like Tommy. You see them guys, the chances they've had off the back of moments of him.
He's at the club on loan. Is the loan market something you would consider using next year?
Yeah, possibly. We wouldn't rule it out. I think, to be quite clear, we'll always look in-house first. We'll then look permanence, and then if we can't get what we need in those markets, as we did with Twiney, we then looked at the loan market, and whether that's a loan, ideally with the option of making it permanent, or if none of them options are available, then if you have to take a loan, then obviously that's kind of last resort. But I think we have to be open to it. Just if we want to build a side that is progressively moving forward and competing.
Minor surgery, you were saying, for Campering and Matty James. How does that impact their summer? Does that mean that they have to be here on the treatment table while all the rest of the players are on a beach?
Yeah, they need a break as well. I think that's with the medical guys to obviously make sure that they get the program they need, they rehab properly. So yeah, their plans are designed specifically for them. The same as the Rob Atkinsons, the Sam Bells, Cal Naismiths, Eamon. They'll be getting a program that's bespoke to them, and of course they'll have to be in for periods to make sure that we want as many available for day one of pre-season as possible. Yeah,
I saw Sam Bell in the car park last week. Big smile on his face. He never changes. In terms of the players you mentioned, we don't want to put unfair pressure on them, but how likely they'll be available for the start of next season?
Yeah, that's the plan at the minute. I think if they've actually got a little, probably more time on the end of it, then it's not a rush to get them back. I think we can actually be a little bit, we've got a bit of extra time with the off season, which helps. So, we've sat down, we had some meetings around what their off seasons looks like, and they're working quite tightly together, Rob and Belly, and I think that's probably been a big plus in that they've been able to support each other through the challenges of sometimes rehabbing. So hopeful and like I said, looking forward to getting them back pre-season.
Will we see Zach Viner on Saturday?
Zach trained today, so he'll be available for the weekend as it stands.
And for the last time this season, let's assess the opposition. Stephen Schumacher's come in and I think has steadied the ship. They're on the up, it would seem.
Yeah, he obviously did a terrific job at Plymouth. I have to say, enjoyed how they played. I thought he did a really, really good job there, and he's obviously made the move to Stoke in season, which I can relate to. It's not always easy in terms of you getting your ideas, your ways of working across straight away, and that's the bit I think he's shown that he can obviously adapt to the group that he's got, and I'm sure he'll obviously have a busy summer in terms of building what he wants it to look like. But I think in terms of when you look at them in terms of they'll be hard to beat. They've got qualities themselves. And like you said, he's done a really good job of stabilising them. Thank you.
Cam's surgery, I presume that's to do with the little niggle issue. He was sort of back end of this season, or sort of second half of this season. Is that? It's
just hernia. It's nothing major. It's just hernia. Just this opportunity to get it cleaned up quickly, and obviously, give him a rest, and also get him right for day one.
What's Matty's injury?
Similar, to be fair. He had surgery a little while ago on one side and not the other, hernia. So it's almost like a buy one get one free. I think in terms of he's gone in and he had previous with other little bits and pieces, so he had a bit of a clean up as well as the hernia repaired.
Obviously, him not being available for Saturday, his future very much up in the air. There's an obvious sort of conclusion to be reached that he's played his last game for Bristol City. Are we? I mean,
not definitely that. No, I wouldn't say that. I think I've got some more meetings this week. I think he's done a terrific job, Jamie. I've really enjoyed working with him, and I think it's a case of seeing what that looks like. So there's no definite decision on that yet. No.
Brian Tinian was on Robin's TV before the game on Saturday and said that Joe Williams has been offered a new deal. I'm just wondering what your kind of read is on that situation. What do you think might happen there?
I think it's one to. I have to say, once I don't massively get involved in those conversations, I speak with the players, open and honest with the players in terms of what I think and where they're at. Hence, obviously, what I spoke around with Tommy at the weekend, and Joe's done really well, to be fair. And I think obviously didn't had a bit of a slow start, I think, here with the volume of games. But when you look at how he's performed to a really good level, he's still in his peak years. Really, he's 27? I think he's. You know what I mean? He's still of an age where. I think he's still got a point to prove at this level for me. I think, and he started to show that in games where he's brought moments of real quality. So again, I think it's want him to stay, and it's now with him.
Do you think there'll be competition to get him back?
Most likely, yeah. I think when you look at it, I think you only have to look how he's performing. I think anyone that's performing to that level will have interest and demand. But again, I think sitting with Joe, he's quite clear. I think in terms of he knows how he gets treated, how he gets coached. He sees what we're trying to do, and like I said, the minute I think it's a good place for him.
Going back to Scott, when you said about sort of him playing in the structure, but also playing with freedom, is that kind of why it's good to have the 210s? Because you can kind of play someone like Jason Knight, who is just so busy, who can kind of sort of help. Does that help the other 10 get a bit more freedom? Because a number 10 in kind of the modern game is a bit of a tricky position because of the demands off the ball now that perhaps you didn't have 15, 20 years ago or whatever, when the sort of golden era of the 10, if you like. So is that kind of why you do that with the 210s in your head?
Yeah, I think there's elements to it without getting massively heavy.
Well, no, but that's kind of why I answered.
Well, at the same point, giving away everything we're going to try.
That's true.
That's what I want to do. So I think in terms of for me, it's around occupying spaces and asking questions of the opposition. So we create certain structures and have certain movements to ask the right questions of the opposition. And that's what I've said before around the way we coach the players is to give them solutions and options, and then pick the right one. Because if we get the right structure and we have the players free off of it, for me, you can exploit the opposition in certain areas in certain ways. So Like you saw, Twine drifting central at the weekend was one that, given how they played with the outside of their outside midfielders, it just created pockets of space that we felt we could drift into. So it's then whether they can see it or not, and obviously naturally I think with his intelligence you see that he can. So I think it's like that. Like I said, it's occupying spaces and it's more principles than it is you have to do this. And I think that's the key to it for me in what I like. That for me then creates an element of unpredictability, which we like watching in the game, right? But it also allows us to keep control, which, as you know, is really important to me as well. So it's finding that balance of giving players freedom, but also not giving up complete control.
And sort of the flip side of Richard's question about how your working relationship, how do you think he's progressed, developed, changed as a player since you had him a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I don't think his strengths have massively changed in terms of what he's really good at. And I think you see that at the weekend is, the positions he takes up and the ways he turns. So he turns the right way for me, and when you're playing in between the lines, just having that awareness of space where pressure's coming from and then putting your body in the way to win the free kick that he scores from. He did a similar thing, obviously, at Norwich. So I think understanding where pressure comes from and then being able to protect the ball. The same as obviously Tommy's penalty, he turns for me the right way because of pressures from behind and he's able to slide it. So I think definitely that. And just the fact he takes risks. I think that, he takes risks in different ways to what profile we had in terms of people taking risks dribbling and taking players on. He takes risks by trying to slide it or trying to chip it over people or having shots. And again, I think that for me is the bit, is having blend and balance that complements each player's strengths and weaknesses.
On the penalties, you mentioned it there. You've had quite a few. Third overall in the Championship and 4 in the last 3 home games. I think that's right. Why do you think that is? Because it's beyond just like getting the rub of the green, isn't it? There is a sort of, a reason why teams get penalties.
Yeah, no, I think it's getting the ball in the right areas. I think, I think back to some of the games where, we had a lot of the ball but outside the box. I think what we've spoken a lot about is trying to get the ball inside the box and asking questions. So I think it's the big bit for me. I think it's being brave and sliding people in. It's being brave to run. Ultimately, the bit we talk to the players a lot is we'll work hard to get the ball into an area. Then it's on you guys to express yourself. But at the same point, understand. We give them little bits in terms of how to get in certain areas in the box. So I think, for me, it's not a coincidence. I think it's the players understanding what we're trying to do. I think it's on the players in terms of being brave and taking the risks. And trying to get into areas where you can hurt them, and that comes back to me the bit I've spoken about when we've spoken about identity and style. I think you've started to see it a bit more recently, where we've real purpose to our possession, and like I said, credit to the players for taking it on board.
With the off-season, how the players are given a programme as well in the off-season. Like, how hot are you on them in terms of what they've got to do over the off-season before they come back into it?
We had the meeting this morning actually with them. I think we give them everything, but I have a huge amount of trust in them. I've made it quite clear in terms of the expectations of when we do the testing, the screening, and what we expect them to come back like. And for me, that I think it's such an intense, long year that the last thing they need when they're off is people chasing and hounding them to, have you done this, have you done that, etc., etc. So I think it's players understanding themselves. Some might need that. Some might actually need one of the staff to check in on them to make sure that they're pushed and they're doing it, which again is one way of working. Other players will just go and do the work. So I think it's putting in the players' court, the power in them to go, look, this is the expectation pre-season. Make sure you meet it. If not, of course, there's consequences. Whether it's extra sessions, missing sessions because you're not, you're at risk of injury, whatever it is. I have to say now, in general, the players come back in such good condition. They're tremendous athletes that take care of themselves. A lot of them aren't going away and boozing for 3-4 weeks in the summer. It's very different, I think, the game now to how well they look after themselves. And ultimately, for the goal of if we want to be successful next year, you've got to be able to do as many sessions pre-season as possible. So make sure you come back in this condition, but we're not going to chase and hound them. Any
foods off the table?
For me or the players?
Or the players, anything bad? Mayonnaise was always the one that people...
The chefs there are unbelievable, to be fair. They're incredible. So the players are well educated. They know what's right, what's wrong, and everything's about moderation, right?
With when you mentioned as well about in the context of the transfer market and kind of leagues finish, I assume you mean because of leagues and clubs, or they'll finish a different season. I mean, Scott and Burnley being a prime example, still got a few weeks of the Premier League. But does that give you an opportunity to watch any games?
Yeah, I did. I'll probably get out to a few playoff games, and then if there's the scope to maybe go to a few abroad if they fit. And of course, I watch a lot of games anyway. Obviously, it's different when you go live in person. So if I can get to some, I will. But yeah, it's a case of being efficient with your time. I think that's the biggest bit for me. So yeah, I'll definitely get to some games in England, and then if there's someone that we really feel is worthwhile going to watch, then I'll do that. But there's also a huge amount of trust in the recruitment guys, as they're constantly here, there and everywhere watching games.
And finally, how is the training for next weekend?
Slow. Now, to be fair, I've been out and about, got me new walking shoes, I've been putting some miles in them, so I think, look, it's probably as mental challenge as anything to stay awake for 24 hours and do obviously 10 up, 10 down. So I think, like I said, it'll round the season off nicely, I think, in terms of, I never forget how fortunate we are and how privileged we are with the industry working and in life in general. So again, I think the opportunity to go and test ourselves and do something quite difficult and give back is massive. So yeah, like I said, I've been doing a bit, probably not enough, but I've got a good team doing it with me, so hopefully they'll pull us through.
Well, whereabouts have you been walking, people? Because obviously this sort of neck of the woods is well known for its walking routes. Is there any sort of special places?
To be fair, we've actually done a lot around the city, to be fair, which has been quite interesting because you've got some steep climbs, obviously, up to from where we're at into Clifton. So been doing a fair few around the city, but family are moving up this summer, so been doing a fair bit. I've got a couple of dogs as well, so I do a fair bit back home.
And you mentioned before about sort of not cramming, sorry, wrong term, but doing some of the opposition work on the bikes. Given that's coincided with this run, I just wondered if that's something you're going to be taking forward, because actually it's worked out. Yeah, no, we'll continue it. Yeah, no, we'll continue it. I think it's the biggest challenge, the intensity and the volume of work that we have to go through is what you tend to do is neglect yourself a little bit. So again, I think, if we can jump on the bike for half an hour and code a game while we're doing it and get an idea of the opposition, and at the same point, try and look after our physical, mental health a little bit as well, I think that's massive. So yeah, it's definitely something we'll take forward.